on it being first name terms. And
what are the positive responses and feelings that you get from children on that, in terms of how it affects their behaviour, their learning?
Yeah, it really brings things down to a conversation that you're having where the child feels that by the fact you're allowing them to use your first name, you're playing one card, which is one of respect.
Like that.
And so that's your starting point. And it's quite a good starting point.
Welcome to Barrow Hill Junior School in the heart of Westminster. We started partnering with this school just 3 months ago, and I was really intrigued to find out more because it's the first school that I've come into contact with in 15 years that don't actually wear uniform. I wanted to meet the head teacher, David Tomlinson, to find out why that is and how that affects their cognitive and creative performance of the pupils. David shares so many remarkable insights. He's a very caring and honest head teacher. In fact, one of the most honest and caring head teachers that I've ever met. And I'm really looking forward to sharing his insights and experiences with you. It's only quite short now, the teacher training. What was the sort of main difference of teacher training before compared to how it is now?
Teacher training way back was a 4-year course, a 4-year degree course.
Wow.
And then the PGCE came in, so you could either do a PGCE or a 3-year teacher training course.
Yeah.
And I'd say that the PGCE is the most common, but you tend to get, since the PGCE was introduced, I did it myself, since it's been introduced, more and more components have had to be shoehorned into that.
Yeah.
So the PGCE is worked out to the hour. How many hours are we doing this? How many hours are we doing? And they've got to go through everything. And I think that PE is a really time-heavy piece of training.
Especially in terms of the safety aspects, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and so I think it actually, the assumption is for people designing a PGCE is that yes, we will give the teachers some opportunity in their teaching practice, and we will do maybe an afternoon on PE, because that's all they will have in their entire PGCE. That's all I got.
It doesn't work long term though, does it?
No,
because
it doesn't.
How can you apply those skill sets in a powerful, meaningful way if you're only getting half an hour training on it or short, condensed?
I think it's one of those things where they assume you're getting more from your school placement than actually your school placement will provide.
But if the school placement doesn't have a specialist in that subject, then it must be really, really challenging.
Yes, it is, and I think that over time, that's when a school's culture can lose its emphasis on skills training in PE, for instance. You know, really getting the children to identify for themselves what the skills are. Whereas I think what we were doing was quite a lot of coaching, but I don't think it was teaching. You know, it was good coaching that we were doing before sometimes. We were certainly delivering the national curriculum.
How would you define the difference between teaching and coaching?
Coaching to me is when you've got children who are already reasonably proficient or on the verge of being reasonably proficient, and you want them to play their best game. Whereas teaching, you've got a whole range of abilities, and you've got some children you really want to challenge who are very proficient, some children who are somewhere around the middle and you want to really push them on, and some children who they're either just beginning that or they've struggled with it, but that every child understands that there are elements to that activity that they can isolate and improve. And what I've seen is Alex doing that, you know, and using the right terminology, really linking it back to your different body parts and how they can act. And also the group work, you know, I really love it when he puts together something where the children are working in their teams and they do either a gymnastics display or, you know, he's really challenging them to always, right, can you add another component to that? Remember when and he refers back to prior learning. All of these elements that we use when we're teaching English or maths, he's using in PE, and that's proper teaching, I would say.
I love that. One of the things that I was very passionate about when I started HNC when I was really young was how we go about combat, because I found that through academic study, I learned a lot about academics, and then there was missing some of the artistic application side, which I found that I got through sport. And my thing was, like, how do we get the best of the academic knowledge that I've acquired and combine that with the artistic knowledge that I've applied, and then fuse that together to form a well-rounded education, because there's a lot of coaching principles that when brought into teaching effectively can really support the children's learning, especially in terms of like long-term progression, especially when you do have those high ability children and all that sort of stuff. Is how do you take them further, and that idea of continuous improvement. And then it's about using the pedagogy of teaching in order to give that the surface to make sure that it's accessible to all, and sort of combining those components.
No, I'd agree. It's you know, what you've just described there is Alex has been with us since January, and we're really starting to see some of that, you know, come forward now. And also for us as a school, it's seeing what Alex does, and all teachers are like magpies. They'll take the best bits, and, you know, even just walking through, taking your class through a lesson that Alex is teaching, you'll see the teacher will notice something about, oh, he's using these whiteboards, or he's using this bit of equipment, oh, I'll ask him about that later. You know, that's really good. Plus he's also putting together some proper planned CPD for us, so that we can really get the most out of having, you know, a really good expert here.
Awesome. And what are the key focuses for you as a head teacher here at Barrow Hill at the moment?
In PE or
just generally?
For us, we've worked really hard over the last 5 years in rewriting our curriculum. So we started off with our English curriculum, we totally rewrote it, and we did that with a very good consultancy called Literacy Tree, and literacy curriculum. They work with us, and it has ended up being a really spectacular success for this little school. You know, our writing results went from below national to now being in the top 10% in the country. Phenomenal. And it's taken 5 years to do that. You know, so it's a big piece of work, but it was very important to me that we did start off with writing, because I think that's how children can express themselves. It sparks off original thought, it makes them consider what it's like to be walking along in somebody else's shoes. Really good writing can transport you to another world, and it's good for you in terms of reflecting as well and getting to know yourself. So we started off with, sorry,
is that something, just to interject there, is that something that you focus on as well in terms of your leadership, is just writing things on paper, or does that not make a sort of cognitive difference to you?
No, it does make a big difference to me, yes, and I use writing myself to really order my thoughts and to have a think, and to something that might feel good at first, and then when I'm writing it down thinking, no, this would be better, or put it in a different order. So with the children, we do a lot of work on editing as well, and we give them a different coloured pen, so that it's not a mistake, you know, own your edits, you know, use that to really make a difference. So we started off with English, we revamped our maths as well, that's done very well. We rewrote our creative curriculum, that was the most recent thing, and at the moment we're doing the same with our science, art and music have all been this year. So our priority at the moment really is to make sure that our creative curriculum is really sparky, that it's got cohesion to it, that it's got that the children's experience builds up, they make progress year on year on year, that it all holds together. We had an Ofsted in October, and they said that the curriculum came out very, very strongly, that it's cohesive, that it's engaging, and that it gives opportunity to write across the curriculum as well. So you can open up a creative curriculum book or a science book, and you'll see quite a bit of writing in there, as well as photographs and captions, reports, debates written up, you know, all of that sort of thing that adds to the children's experience. And for art, we're creating an art gallery in the school. So yeah, that should be, I'm really excited about that. I really want that to be a focus for the children to walk in and think, wow, you know, I did that, you know, and here's the gallery notes about my piece underneath it, and
it really
see themselves as an artist.
That, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And for music, the children co-wrote a musical with our music coordinator, who is, yes, he's terrific, the coordinator as well. The children storyboarded, they came up with the characters, they wrote the script, they contributed to some of the composition and some of the lyrics, and they did this over, let me see, they started it in October and they performed it in February, so by the time they performed it, they knew it inside out, and they loved that. And I think creating something original, and again it's going back to using those writing skills of storyboarding and of scripting, it just gave it, they approached that from the position of people who feel they can do it.
Yes.
Whereas I think if we just turned around to them and said, come on, get a move on, write a musical, they would have been, where do I start? And I think for them it was a process of understanding that actually they already had quite a number of those skills, and there were other skills that they did need to work on or take a chance on taking a different role. So we created a school band for it, bought new instruments, and they did 6 performances in 4 days. Yeah, they did a dress rehearsal for the local infant school, they did 4 performances for parents, and they did a performance for the school, so they saw it all themselves.
Isn't it amazing when you have something with no reality, and you share it with the children, you share a concept with them, and then you see them perform it live in front of an audience?
Yes.
And
they stood really tall, you know, and we've seen the after effects of that as well. There's a couple of children who are in the band who actually really found themselves through that, who found their confidence, and who were helping younger children who, and they wouldn't have been in that situation, and they wouldn't have felt that they could do that if they hadn't had this sort of creative experience, genuinely creative, sparky experience for them.
Absolutely. So you've been here for 6 years now as head teacher?
Yes, this is halfway through my 6th year.
And is that something that you've always wanted to do, was to become a head teacher?
No, not at all.
Oh, wow.
I didn't expect to do this, and I think if you talk to a lot of head teachers, there's a lot of us who didn't intend to. It wasn't something that was ever on my sort of list of things to do. My way has been quite circuitous. I was really interested in working with children with special needs. I was a class teacher, then I was a group teacher in a school, and at the time that I was thinking of applying for Senko roles, that was where I was going. There was a brief period of time in education where Senko roles started being submerged into inclusion manager roles, and it was at that time. So in my school, they suddenly decided they wanted to have a deputy head for inclusion, so I made a really cheeky application.
Nice.
And I wasn't really prepared for it, if I'm to be honest with you. It was genuinely a cheeky application. I hadn't led English or maths, for instance, which would be your classic route to senior leadership, would be that you would have headed up, you know, one of the big subjects like that. And I hadn't been a Senko, and so the school took a chance on me, and I worked really hard for those 7 years to prove my worth, so that they could see that it, you know, that they had made the right choice.
Yeah, and what sparks me about that is that you had the confidence. You say it was a cheeky application.
Yes, it was.
But the thing is, you had the confidence to apply. So without that confidence, then, you know, you could have gone a completely different
Well, the
direction.
application's one part of it, isn't it? It's when you get it
But
that I suddenly realised, and I did think, you know, what have I done? Because it was a very, very big school. It's 740 children at that school, so I was one of 2 deputy heads, and my remit was inclusion, and the school was what Ofsted used to call satisfactory, which nowadays is called requires improvement. So our job was to take the school up to good, which we did do, and it took quite some doing. We didn't get it the first time that we had our Ofsted, but we did get it the time after that, and it taught me an awful lot about drawing on strengths of people, and also having lines that can't be crossed and lines that can be. You know, sometimes you need to be flexible, and sometimes you do need to stand your ground, but to do it hopefully if you've got enough goodwill in the bank, because you're an honest broker, because you work hard yourself, because you model what you're doing, and you don't ask people to do things you're not prepared to do yourself. If you've got that sort of goodwill in the bank, then you can get change to happen, because in all sorts of leadership there is always going to be a time when you find yourself having to sit down with somebody and ask them to do something that they just don't really want to do.
Got that. Get it all the time.
You recognise it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. What would you say?
And the reasons might be good reasons for not wanting to do that. You know, I don't think you can take it necessarily as a defensive or antagonistic response. You know, you do have to listen, but if it's even so, sometimes there's a time for pushing and a time for just sitting back and listening a bit more.
Yeah, I think what I get from that and conversation that I've had as well is it's all about understanding the other person first.
Yes.
And when you understand that person, how they think, how they behave, and like the what's in it for them mentality, then you're more confident, clear, and you can design a better outcome that works collaboratively for all parties. And also, like, people have, it's interesting when adults, we all have a mindset, we all have behavior patterns, and sometimes it just takes a different layer of questioning or a different type of questioning to unravel that and go, actually that's a fixed mindset, that's a pattern, how can we break free from it so that you can actually leverage up and become a better version of yourself, or perform better, or really interesting.
And sometimes noticing the details in what people do actually do, because everyone will bring something of their own childhood, their own skills, their own interests into it, and you know, that really does make a difference, and will chime with the children. You know, the children will notice that as well, and that if their teacher, for instance, at the weekends has this particular, you know, goes windsurfing, for instance, and that's a real thing about them, that, you know, and they're prepared to talk about it, and the more personal it is in education, I think the more the children respond. It's all about those relationships, and you know, not treating teachers and LSAs and other colleagues as cardboard cutouts. You know, and I do see that. I think in terms of education management, that's something I've seen happen over a period of time, that and I think that organisations are wising up to that over the last couple of years. When I was applying to be a head teacher in 2012, 2013, around about that time, I read the adverts, and some of them just made me go cold.
Really? Why?
Because it was all corporate management speak, you know, and they were using really mechanical, so mechanical that they would use words like, are you passionate about blah blah blah, are you, but actually they didn't mean passionate, they just meant, are you corporate?
Right.
You know, and it was really obvious. It was a totally joyless experience reading the advert or looking on the website. You know,
how does that impact what you do here at Barrow Hill and how you lead, how you write your adverts?
Well, I was very lucky that when I saw the advert for Barrow Hill, it was written in human language.
Right, I like that.
You know, and it was written about a real place. And so it stood out. You know, it wasn't just using buzzwords or phrases that were designed to do this or designed to do that. And when I walked, so that interested me, it got me through the gate.
What sort of language were they using? Because I'm quite interested in that, because as you say, you know, a lot of the adverts that I see are pretty much the same.
Yeah, really standard and
this
dull.
This is a school, it got this and upstairs, it's here, and
there's ways, you know, considering that we are educators, and being an educator in a classroom is all about getting somebody's attention. I think that education per se can be very dull when it comes to how it recruits, and very dull how it trains as well. Some of the training that you go on can be very much PowerPoint, things being read off PowerPoints. Well, you would never do that with children. Why would you do that with adults?
Why would you not make it engaging?
No,
I have the same.
So we've moved away from that here, in that the training we do for staff, quite often we will teach a lesson. So we'll get the science teacher, we've just got a science lab that we raised all this money for, and so it's a secondary school standard science lab, and we had all of us in there on Inset Day in September. Some of us have never been in a science lab since we were 14 ourselves.
Love it.
And he taught us, we did an activity, he taught the lesson.
Yeah.
But of course, because the people in there, the teachers and the LSAs, are really good and really interested, they're picking up teaching techniques by watching him do that and by participating, rather than a really drab PowerPoint and that awful phrase, or that awful phrase where people go, oh, you could always do this, or you could always do that, and everybody's just thinking, you could always just let us go for a coffee now, because I'm absolutely bored out of my head.
And when you see it, you feel it, and when you feel it, it becomes a part of your embodiment and your action. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, that really makes an impact.
And I think, you know, in terms of the advert for here, and how we advertise now, we write about things in an advert that might be appealing. You know, it might be appealing for people to know that our school, you know, for instance, we're non-uniform and it's first name terms, that we spend a lot of time on relationships with families, that we achieve our outstanding English and maths because we talk to the children about books they're interested in, and so we give that flavour in there. Also, for teachers to know that we're 1 minute from the Tube, 1 minute from Regent's Park. You know, they are allowed to go out at the end of the school day and hopefully enjoy themselves and see their friends. Maybe something like that about being in central London would actually be quite appealing to some.
Sure. A couple of things I want to hinge onto in that conversation. You mentioned about the uniform. And children don't wear uniform and they address people by first name basis. What's the psychology? What's the reasoning behind that? That's very unique. I
could give you a deep answer to that, but I'm afraid it wouldn't be one that I should really own, because I inherited that. It wasn't something that I brought with me, and in fact, when I first came here, and the previous head teacher to me said, oh, David, it's first name terms here, but I think you'll find that the children are, the relationship between the teachers and the children, it's friendly without being familiar. And I've always thought that was a good phrase that he had for that. And he'd inherited it too. Apparently it's been like this since the early 70s and nobody's changed it. And actually, at first, when I first was being shown around, I was thinking, I don't know that I'm comfortable with the first name terms. The uniform didn't bother me. I've worked in schools with and without uniform. But the first name terms I wasn't sure about, because I thought, you know, so you've got to have respect there, otherwise the whole school falls over, nothing can get done. And your behaviour management, you know, how does that work?
What was it that shifted your mindset on that?
I'd been here for about 2 minutes, and I saw.
I was going to say 2 years.
No, I had been here about 2 minutes, and I'd walked through a couple of classrooms, and I saw the relationships going on, just in the interactions between the teachers and the children, and I just thought, I've got to open my mind to this. And then I was appointed, and the children on the school council, you know, asked me, you know, are you going to make us wear uniform? And about the first name terms. And so I told them what I've just told you. I hadn't had the experience of working in a school with first name terms. I didn't know whether at first that I was for it or not. I kept an open mind, and actually I had a good run up, because I was appointed in the February and I wasn't starting until the September, and I was coming into school quite a lot. By the time I started in September, I was absolutely sold on it being first name terms. And
what are the positive responses and feelings that you get from children on that, in terms of how it affects their behaviour, their learning?
It really brings things down to a conversation that you're having, where the child feels that by the fact you're allowing them to use your first name, you're playing one card, which is one of respect.
Like that.
And so that's your starting point. And it's quite a good starting point, particularly if you like to use restorative justice for behaviour management. Particularly, you know, you'll see walking around our school that trust, fairness and respect are our 3 school values. So they run right the way through our curriculum. when Alex is teaching PE outside, the words are up there and what the definitions are. It's all about putting those words into action.
Yeah.
And the children can very much see the link, and they will all be able to name those 3 values, believe you me, because they're there for when things go right and they're there for when things go wrong.
Yeah.
So there are rewards, there are consequences, and they're all in
and they
steps.
all work together.
Yeah.
I love the clarity on that in terms of them being both rewards and consequences, and them playing both for when people do things well and when people don't do things well.
Yes, and when you're looking at consequences, there has to be a route out of that and back with each one of those steps. And I think, we are really open-minded to that. We brought in a new behaviour policy just over a year ago now, and I'm reviewing that, and we're getting more training in as well for behaviour management. Even though behaviour management generally is very good here, there's some parts of it I really want to tighten up on. We're really interested in the psychology of education, on how you feel as a person in that classroom will dictate what you learn and how you interact. So I start off with all of our teachers, saying to them, what do you bring in with you? Who was your favourite teacher? And also, who was your least favourite teacher? You can ask that question of a group of adults, and it doesn't matter how old they are, how long it was. There's an instant answer. They instantly know the name of the one they really liked and the one they didn't. And when we did that exercise as a staff, when we were introducing our behaviour policy, of course everybody did that, and when we named the things that people liked, or what made a favourite teacher, what made a favourite teacher, what made your least favourite teacher, people on our staff have been educated all over the world in a variety of settings. The words they came out with were the same words.
And I bet no one said teachers that shouted at me.
No, absolutely, absolutely that, and it's a very powerful position to be in. And, my starting point is always, if you can take yourself back to being a 7-year-old coming through the school gate and you've got your paper mache stegosaurus underneath your arm, who are you going to show it to? Because if there is somebody there who's interested, it might be a teacher, it might be an LSA, it might be the person who works in reception, it might be the person who works on the premises team, it might be any of the people there but who is that person who's going to take that particular interest in what you have done? And it's like, wow, look what you've done. And he's got nearly all his ears, and all of this, well done, great. You're going to try your best in your maths lesson that day, and it's totally unconnected. Your stegosaurus isn't anything to do with your maths, but it does. And if there's nobody there who's interested in what you've created, then guess what? When you do have your maths lesson that day, if it's too tough, you're not going to give it that extra.
And it can be perceived as unconnected. Also, it can be perceived as predictably irrational. Because, as you say, how you feel leads to how you think, and how you think leads to how you behave, which produces the outcome of the result in terms of how you perform. How would you describe your leadership, David?
Oh gosh, that's quite a hard question.
You don't strike me as one of the shouter.
No, I try not to. I try not to. But I don't always succeed. I don't always succeed in anything that I do, and I hope that I'm honest, an honest broker with the staff that I lead. So over time, we've got to know each other quite well, and I think that they can see that I will be honest with them, and that I will try and draw on the strengths that we have, but we are definitely there is a vision there as well, and I think they do understand and share that vision. I think for the first couple of years, that was quite a challenge, and some staff left.
And that's what happens in leadership, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that was healthy for them. I think it was healthy for us. Now I would say that that people understand, what I mean by high standards for all, which is our strap line, if you like, is that no child gets left behind, and that we really do go into what the relationship is between the child and the teacher, and we're getting there. We're not the finished article yet by a long stretch, but we are getting there. Hopefully they will see that my management style is that there is the dialogue between us as professionals, that if they've got a good sparky idea that chimes with where they know the school is going, because I've done my job properly in leading us in that direction, that I will always take that on board and try and weave it in wherever I possibly can. And it's paid off. A lot of the innovations that we have in the school, like the music that I talked about just before, like how we organise our assessments. My deputy head came up with that, and also it's been refined since then with suggestions from middle leaders and other teachers.
It's about getting them to come up with creative ideas as well, as opposed to being a top-down approach. I mean, what strikes me from our conversation today, and it's the first time I've met you, is very caring, very honest with people, which is absolutely, the undercurrent of good leadership is being caring and building those relationships. And one thing that stood out to me in what you said is that it was healthy for them, it was healthy for us. And Alex and I, who's behind the camera, were talking about just on the way here that you can not like somebody's performance but still like them, and still respect them. You can not respect somebody's results that they've achieved, but you can still respect them as a person. And actually you can part in mutually respectful ways, in a way which one of the things that I'm fascinated by is that you can part in a way in which empowers somebody and inspires somebody to reach the next level for themselves, or inspires them to do something different, or inspires them or empowers them in some way. But that doesn't mean just because that a person is no longer working with you or fit for the organisation that you're in, that that you need to be disrespectful to each other. No, you don't want that, really. What would you say was, if you were to become the chief inspector of schools or something like that, what would be the one or two things that you would change to really shift the narrative of education in this country? I really like the shift that's happening at the moment. Fantastic. So that it's a broader curriculum, that other subjects outside reading, writing and maths are valued, and because they contribute so much, particularly to well-being and mental health. And I think that actually the current emphasis in teaching is probably the best it's ever been in my career. That I've taught in a few different schools in London, and I've worked overseas as well. And I think that seeing mental health, well-being, creativity being valued and not just seen as little add-ons, that that's a nice bit of luxury. There's actually happy children will perform better, will achieve more, will trust their own instincts, will have original thoughts and share them and spark off other ideas. You will get much more from it. And also they can create the lifestyle, the trajectory that they want, as opposed to what society wants or what the norm is. Actually they can create a pathway for themselves. And schools will always need to emphasise reading, writing and maths, because these are life skills you need, and like I said before about writing, that's a way of personal expression as well. So I wouldn't want to go too far one way or the other, but you can have it all. You can literally have it all, and each thing will help the other if you keep that balance. My fear is that education shifts in cycles, and sometimes that cycle can pass quite quickly. And particularly when you have changes in different governments of all different parties, it's not one party more than another, that you'll get an emphasis of one thing over another, or sometimes there's a general election of one sort or another, that one result or another comes from it, and whoever is the new Secretary of State for Education chooses to change things to put their own trademark on it. And you think, actually, don't throw everything out when you do that. Work with what's working. Because this current emphasis
on the broader curriculum, and Ofsted really emphasising that. It's been a long time coming, and I want us to really hold on to that, regardless what happens politically. I want us to hold on to that. Although, of course, politically, I hope there's a bit more money coming towards schools.
Bring on the money.
Yeah.
Chief Inspector of Ofsted, bring on the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
I think
it's the Department for Education. You know, I think this country needs to invest more in its schools.
Yeah, I agree with you. Brilliant. David, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking with you. I think
You're
the quote of the day and the title of this video is "You can have it all." And I really, really love that quote. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming in.